Have you ever noticed that almost no country has a purple flag? Think about it. Red, blue, green and yellow are everywhere, but where's the purple? Is it just a coincidence, or is there a deeper reason behind it? It turns out this isn't random at all. There's a fascinating mix of history, economics, and even psychology that explains why purple is almost never seen on flags. In this video, we're diving into a centuries-old mystery, one that involved ancient kings, sea snails, and even a color that was once worth more than gold. By the end, you'll never look at flags or the color purple the same way again. Let's get started. All right, let's start with the basics. Why do we even have flags? I mean, have you ever stopped to think about it? Every country has one. Every major event features them. But what's the big deal? Well, the answer is pretty cool. Flags aren't just pretty pieces of cloth. They're symbols of identity, history, and pride. They tell a story, who we are, where we come from, and what we stand for. Thousands of years ago, armies needed a way to recognize their own troops on the battlefield, and kingdoms wanted a visual symbol of power. Over time, those old war banners evolved into national flags, representing unity, struggle, and sometimes even a nation's dreams. And just like flag itself, colors are chosen for a reason. It's not like they just threw a bunch of paint on a canvas and said, "Yep, this looks patriotic." No, every color has a story, a meaning, a purpose. Let's start with red. It's one of the most common flag colors, and for a good reason. It usually stands for bravery, revolution, or sacrifice. Basically, things that make a country say, "Look at us, we're tough." Then there's blue, often symbolizing freedom, justice, and peace. You know, the cool, collected, diplomatic vibe. Green, that's nature, land, and sometimes religion, like in many Islamic nations. Yellow or gold screams prosperity, wealth, or the sun itself. And black? Strength, resilience, or sometimes mourning. Now, these colors are everywhere. Flags across continents use them because they're bold, meaningful, and, most importantly, practical. But wait, what about purple? Well, here's where things get really interesting. If flags show power and identity, why isn't the purple color everywhere? Even though it's linked to royalty, prestige, and wealth. But look around and you'll barely find it. Why? Well, before you think maybe no one liked purple, let's set the record straight. Purple wasn't absent, just incredibly rare. A few flags did dare to wear it. The Second Mexican Empire's flag in the 1860s had a splash of purple in its royal crest. Even Nicaragua and Dominica have a hint of it today. But compared to red, blue, or green, purple is practically an endangered species in flagland. And it wasn't because ancient rulers disliked purple. It was because they couldn't afford it. Back in the day, purple dye wasn't something you could just mix up in a pot. It came from a rare species of sea snail, and extracting even a tiny amount was ridiculously expensive. In fact, at one point, purple dye was worth more than gold. That's why emperors and kings draped themselves in it to show off their wealth. Even the mightiest empires, Rome, China, the Ottomans, rarely used purple in their banners. Not because they weren't powerful enough, but because making a flag that wouldn't cost a fortune was kind of the point. Why waste a treasure on a battlefield when red, blue, or white worked just fine? So, if purple was only rare because it was expensive, then once technology fixed that, flags should have turned purple, right? Well, not exactly. By the 19th century, synthetic dyes made purple affordable for everyone. No more crushing sea snails for color. But by then, flag colors were already set in stone. Nations had been waving red, blue, and white banners for centuries. Changing that would be confusing and unnecessary. And let's talk about visibility. Flags need to stand out, especially from a distance. Red, white, and blue do so as they are bold and high contrast. Purple just doesn't pop the same way. Even today, despite having every color imaginable at our fingertips, most national flags stick to tradition. Purple may rule in fashion, branding, and even fantasy worlds, but in the world of flags, it just never claimed its throne. Another reason is psychology. Sure, purple is a royal color, but it also carries a sense of mystery, creativity, and the unknown. Not exactly the bold, unifying statement most nations want in a flag. They need to rally people together, represent values, and sometimes even intimidate. Purple, with its air of mysticism and the unknown, doesn't quite fit that bill. A country wouldn't want to be seen as vague or elusive. It wants to be recognized, understood, and powerful. That's probably why history's greatest empires stuck to reds, blues, and golds, colors that stood for battle, loyalty, and glory. Would an army march into war under a flag that whispers of mystery rather than dominance? Probably not. Purple may have lost the battle in history, but could it still win the future? With modern dyes, any color is possible. There's no law stopping a country from slapping a giant purple stripe on its flag. But here's the thing, tradition is stubborn. Nations take pride in their flags, and changing them isn't exactly a casual weekend project. Still, the world is always evolving. Maybe a new country, a revolution, or a bold movement will finally give purple its time to shine. Imagine a futuristic nation on Mars, red landscapes, cutting-edge technology, and a purple flag waving in the thin Martian air. Sounds fitting, doesn't it? So, while history may have sidelined purple, the future, that's still unwritten. So, what do you think? If you were designing a flag, would you use purple? Why or why not? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more fascinating deep dives into the stories behind everyday things.